Welcome to Art with me, Katie Cordy. Today I will show you how to draw a comfy cabin in the woods. I encourage you to make this your own. I also strongly recommend using photo references as they can help you come up with ideas you may not have thought of alone. I will be using a pencil and watercolors, but you can use your favorite choice of medium. So for my comfy cabin, I've chosen to do watercolors for this one, but you can use whatever medium you would like. For my watercolors, I have a simple Crayola educational set of watercolors with its given paintbrush. And I have a cup of clean cold water that I will be, well, cool water, not cold, will be using to wash off the paintbrush, as well as a paper towel. Some people like to have 2 cups of water, one for clean water, one for dirty. I don't, due to the fact that if I have a clean cup of water laying around, I get confused and I drink it. I have also been known to get confused, to get distracted, and to drink dirty watercolor water. So, sometimes that happens. If you want, you can also, after you do your watercolors and it dries, you can trace your image in marker if you want to give it more of definition. And then I generally have 2 pencils on me, one that is duller for sketching and one that is sharper to do any last detail work with. So for a comfy cabin, I highly recommend looking at photo references to get an idea of what you want your cabin to look like. Looking at real images can really help you, okay? If you want, you can even create little thumbnails, which are quick drawings that only take a few seconds, preferably, to give you an idea of the approximate layout that you want to use on your building, okay? So again, it all depends on what your preferences are and what your comfort level is, okay? So that being said, let us begin. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to split my paper approximately into thirds, okay? So the first line I'm going to draw is what's called a horizon line, which is essentially where my sky begins and my land ends, okay? You don't actually have to do this. I like doing this because it gives me a good idea of where I want everything to sit. Then for my own reference, I'm going to split this into the foreground and the midground by doing another line, and this is where I'm going to have my cabin sit. So I'm going to have my cabin sit on this line so that it makes anything that looks like it's here far away and anything that looks like it's here closer up. Again, optional, depends on what you want. Then I'm going to begin my cabin, and your cabin may look completely different than mine. Your cabin may emphasize someone who is wealthy. Your cabin might be for a hermit. Your cabin might be even for a witch, okay? So for my cabin, I'm going to start with a triangular shape, and this will become the roof of my cabin, okay? And I can erase any horizon lines that are interrupting it. My next step is coming from my roof. I'm going to draw 2 straight lines, and this will give me an idea of where my walls are. Now I decided that, this line is too far down because I think I want my cabin to actually have shorter walls. So I'm just going to erase this line and move it back up, because sometimes you just have to shift things around. So my foreground is going to be really wide. If I want to, I can actually still keep a line that will tell me anything right here is going to be really large, okay? But I'll worry about that later. I'm going to thicken the roof of my house. I might put snow on it. I haven't decided yet. That's too thick. And this might be your entire cabin. You might want to just have a simple cabin like this and start adding your doors and such. Mine's slightly asymmetrical. It's leaning slightly to the side, but I like that. It gives it character. But I'm going to add on some additions. So, erasing my horizon line here, I am going to start a second roof that's going to create an addition over here. And I'm going to start that a little lower than the top of my first roof, give the idea that it's in the background, and I'm going to do a straight line. Then I'm going to do another straight line, a little lower or a little higher, depending on what kind of perspective you want, than your other roof line. I'm actually going to lower this line. This is why I love working with pencil, is that I can erase. Then for my roof, I don't want it to be a perfect rectangle, because I want to give it a roof shape. So I'm going to knock it slightly to the side. And then I'm going to draw the wall for the other part of my cabin. And then rather than having the ground meet this line here, I'm going to have it a little farther back to give the idea that this is farther behind. And I'm actually going to raise this line, I think. Let's see. Nope, I'm going to keep it where it is. I like it where it is. And I like to add long roofs sometimes. I think it's fun because I like to add porches. And then again, this might be where you stop. This might be, oh, perfect. Want it just like this, okay? But I want to give mine a three-dimensional look. So this shape of this side, I'm essentially going to copy just a little lower than everything else. And then I'm actually going to connect all of the corners. So bottom of the roof, top of the roof, roof line, and then I'm going to connect my wall. And how much roof you show will change your perspective. How much wall, how much roof. And it'll show how wide it is too by how far back you go. Okay, so for instance, if I want it to go farther back, all I have to do is extend these lines and copy the front part of my house again. This takes practice. There are different ways of drawing perspective. This is one. This is actually not the way that I generally do it. I use horizon lines and points. So for instance, I have a horizon line with 2 points, and I'll draw a line and connect it to the horizon lines to essentially create a box. And there are a million different lessons on this on YouTube of varying degrees, okay, on how to do this. Okay, but this is another way to do perspective. I'm just eyeballing this one because this is much simpler to do. And then of course, now I'm going to take the time to add any accessories I want and any background that I want. And I'm just going to sketch these out because I'm going to watercolor all the details in. Okay, so I've sketched out my cabin now, and I'm going to begin my watercolors. Due to the fact that I'm using a hard brush, or a fat brush, I am more limited on what I can do than, say, if I pulled out my, no, that's not a good example. Say, for instance, this brush, which, oh gosh, I think I got from Michael's years ago. I've had my watercolors for over 10 years now. There are different types of brushes for different types of paint, but this is just a simple watercolor brush that came with this set. I have a really bad habit of not using watercolors like watercolors. I tend to use my watercolors like acrylics. There's many different ways that you can use your watercolors. When I mean in the way that I use them like acrylics, in the fact that I put in a lot of color and I put in a lot of detail. Generally, watercolors are supposed to be more fluid, and I tend to get neurotic and make it overly detailed. And I'm going to try to let go on this one. So I chose to do a snowy scene since we are coming up to Christmas. Therefore, I'm going to lean heavily on blues and greens and browns. But again, what colors you choose to use completely depends on your cabin. Maybe your cabin isn't in the middle of winter. Maybe your cabin's in the middle of spring or fall. So again, it is your choice on what your cabin looks like. Make it your own. That's the whole point of art. Okay? All right. And since I've now added the scarf detail that I felt like my snowman needed. Oh, he's missing an arm too. Now I'm going to begin watercoloring. And again, I'm not going to overlay this with markers necessarily unless I feel like it, but you can once this dries. this is an example of a simple watercolor cabin.